I just want to start by reiterating Fadi's point. The war is 2 months today, and I think this is information we've been asking for a few weeks. And given that at least part of it is paid for by tax dollars, I just want to reiterate how much we'd like to see that information as soon as possible. I had a question about the Biden administration's announcement earlier this week, kind of issuing a dire warning that if Congress does not pass funding for Ukraine by the end of the year, it could affect resourcing for that war. Some Republicans are saying that the situation is not as urgent as the administration has presented it because there's at least $1 billion in funds, and given the pace of funding or weapons that have been provided so far, that money can stretch out for a bit of time. I wanted to know if you could give me a Pentagon assessment in terms of when funds could run out and how urgently this funding needs to be provided for Ukraine. Is there a point where the Pentagon feels without that funding in the next weeks, it threatens the war itself?
Sure. So I think the assertion was that Ukraine doesn't need this funding and that they could manage with what we have left. Is that what you were summarizing?
The U.S. has enough funding. There's still enough remaining funding that it could be stretched out for a few more months, that it's not as urgent as the president presented yesterday. Yeah. He said it needed to be before the holidays.
Right. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. I would strongly push back against that assertion. The biggest problem that we are running up against is we don't have enough money to backfill our own stocks, which means we don't have enough to continue to supply Ukraine with what it needs, because it is our weapons, our capabilities, our systems being pulled off our shelves and being shipped over to Ukraine. And so if we can't backfill, that's going to also impact our own readiness, which means that's going to impact what we can provide Ukraine. And so I would really push back on that assertion. And, till very recently, we've enjoyed bipartisan support from Congress, and that security assistance has been critical in providing Ukraine what it needs on the battlefield. And I would just remind you that everyone thought that Putin would take Kyiv in 3 days. And the Ukrainians have done an incredible job of not only defending Kyiv, but then there were other battles that they were continue to push the Russians back, continue to push them into the east and into the south. They are making very good use of our capabilities, and not just ours, allies and partners as well, providing them with the weapon systems that they need. And so you've heard the president say, you've heard the secretary say it, we're in it with Ukraine for the long haul. It's not just about making sure Ukraine has what it needs to defend itself on the battlefield. It's about making sure that Russia also gets the message that it cannot expand into other countries, into other sovereign countries, because that's exactly what Vladimir Putin wants. And, you've seen some support from both sides of the aisle in Congress. I think there's a small majority that oppose sending more funding for Ukraine. We're working through that. We believe that the urgent supplemental request that we submitted to Congress is the right thing for Congress to pass, and we're hopeful that it gets done.
And one last topic.
Sure.
Can we get some sense of the number of sorties that the Ike and Ford strike groups have conducted? Just, I think we haven't had any real visibility on sort of how busy they've been as they have been in the Mediterranean. I'd love, if possible, some data on that.
Yeah, we can take that. Yeah, no problem. Yes, over here.
Thank you. Comparing to the last couple of weeks, they are very